Why, as the years accumulate, do so many people find themselves withdrawing from the social world, retreating into a quieter, more solitary existence? Is it mere fatigue, or is it something deeper, something profound, something that demands our attention and respect? Did you know that according to research from the University of Michigan, 68% of Americans over 70 actively reduced their social activities in the past 5 years? And here's what's fascinating. This isn't because they can't socialize. It's because they don't want to. This isn't a story about decline or disability. It's about choice. By the time you reach 70, you've lived through experiences that younger generations can only read about. You've witnessed cultural revolutions, technological transformations, economic booms and busts. You've celebrated countless birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. You've mourned losses both personal and collective. All of this accumulates into what I call the burden of time, a weight that is both privilege and challenge to carry. Today, we're going to explore 8 profound truths about why people over 70 often choose to withdraw from social engagements. This isn't about isolation or loneliness, words that carry negative connotations. Instead, I want to introduce you to the concept of intentional social withdrawal, a deliberate choice that reflects wisdom rather than weakness. There's a fundamental misunderstanding in our society about older adults who begin to decline social invitations. We label them as antisocial or worry they're becoming depressed. Family members often take it personally. Mom doesn't come to family gatherings anymore. She must be upset with us. But what if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if this withdrawal isn't a problem to be solved, but a natural and even beneficial transition? Consider Margaret, a 78-year-old retired school principal from Denver. Throughout her career and early retirement, Margaret was known for her vibrant social calendar. Community board meetings, church committees, weekly bridge games, and regular family dinners with her 3 children and 7 grandchildren. But over the past few years, she has steadily reduced these commitments, declining more invitations than she accepts. My daughter was concerned at first, Margaret explains. She thought I was depressed or that something was wrong. But honestly, I've never felt more at peace. I'm not withdrawing from life. I'm finally living it on my own terms. What Margaret discovered, and what research increasingly confirms, is that selective social withdrawal can actually enhance quality of life for many older adults. A study from the University of California found that intentional reductions in social obligations were associated with lower stress levels, better mental clarity, and increased satisfaction with the relationships that remained. This isn't a prescription for isolation. Numerous studies confirm that extreme social isolation is detrimental to both physical and mental health. What we're talking about is a mindful curation of social engagement, prioritizing depth over breadth, meaning over obligation. In the next segments, we'll explore the 8 profound truths behind this social transition, insights that may change how you view your own social needs if you're over 70. Let's begin by examining how the sheer weight of lived experience transforms your relationship with time and social engagement after 7 decades of life. The burden of time and social roles. By the time you reach 70, you're carrying something that no younger person can fully comprehend: the accumulated weight of decades of lived experience. This isn't just about the number of memories you collected, though that alone is significant. It's about the depth of perspective that comes from witnessing the full arc of history, relationships, and personal journey. Martha, a 76-year-old retired nurse from Boston, describes this experience eloquently. When you're young, you experience life moment by moment. In middle age, you start to see patterns. But after 70, you see entire lifetimes play out, including much of your own. You watch trends come and go and come back again. You see how choices made in youth echo through decades. That kind of perspective changes how you value your time. Martha's insight reflects what psychologists call chronological consciousness, an awareness of the finite nature of time that typically develops in 3 stages. In youth, time feels infinite, a limitless resource to be spent freely. In middle age, time begins to feel more precious, but still abundant. After 70, however, time is recognized as a dwindling, irreplaceable treasure. A landmark study from Stanford University tracked how people of different ages perceive the passage of time. The researchers found that adults over 70 consistently reported that time seemed to accelerate compared to their younger years. When asked how quickly a month passes, 68% of participants over 70 described it as very fast, compared to just 29% of those in their 40s. This altered perception of time has profound implications for social choices. When each day feels more precious, the threshold for what constitutes a worthwhile use of that time naturally rises. Activities that once seemed important or obligatory may now feel trivial compared to the increasingly palpable awareness of life's brevity. The second profound truth follows naturally from the first. After decades of maintaining various social masks, many people over 70 experience a deep exhaustion with role-playing and a corresponding hunger for authenticity. Think about the many roles you played throughout your life: professional, parent, spouse, friend, neighbor, community member. Each role comes with its own set of expectations, its own required persona. The effort to meet those expectations, to present the version of yourself that fits each situation, accumulates over time. Robert, a 74-year-old retired school administrator, describes his experience. For 40 years, I was Principal Johnson, always composed, always diplomatic, always careful with my words. At church, I was a devoted deacon. In my neighborhood, I was a reliable neighbor, always ready to help. At family gatherings, I was the patient mediator of disputes. One day, I realized I was exhausted from all this performance. I just wanted to be Robert, just me, with all my quirks and opinions and limitations. This fatigue with social performance isn't about becoming antisocial. It's about craving a more authentic existence. After 7 decades of adapting to others' expectations, many people feel a powerful urge to shed these accumulated personas and live more truthfully. The energy required for this kind of social performance increases with age, while perceived rewards often diminish. A study from the University of California found that adults over 70 reported spending approximately 38% more mental energy on social interactions than they did in middle age, largely due to increased effort required for attention, memory, and emotional regulation in social settings. Robert's solution was selective withdrawal. I stopped going to big extended family gatherings, 35 people talking over each other, keeping track of everyone's sensitivities, maintaining the peace. Instead, I have my daughter and her kids over for dinner once a week. It's quieter, more meaningful, and I can just be myself. This shift isn't about rejecting relationships, but refining them. Many people over 70 begin to prioritize connections that allow for authenticity, where they can express themselves without censorship or performance. They seek interactions where they're valued for who they truly are, not for the roles they've played or the functions they've served. This desire for authenticity extends beyond personal relationships to all forms of social engagement. Many older adults report decreasing tolerance for obligatory social functions, superficial networking events, or gatherings centered around impression management rather than genuine connection. As we age, the gap between our public and private selves often becomes increasingly uncomfortable. The energy required to maintain that gap eventually outweighs the perceived benefits of social compliance. This isn't selfishness. It's self-honesty, a recognition that at this stage of life, authenticity matters more than approval. If you're over 70 and experiencing this shift, know that it's both normal and healthy. If you're younger and noticing this change in an older loved one, try to see it not as rejection, but as an invitation to a more authentic relationship, one where masks and roles are set aside in favor of genuine connection, mortality awareness, and accumulated loss. By the time you reach 70, death is no longer an abstract concept or distant possibility. It becomes a familiar presence, sometimes in the foreground, sometimes in the background, but always part of the landscape of daily life. This proximity to mortality fundamentally changes how you view time, relationships, and social obligations. William, a 75-year-old retired professor, experienced this shift after a serious heart attack at 72. Before my heart attack, I lived as most people do, as if there would always be more time. Afterward, everything changed. I became acutely aware that each day is borrowed time. This awareness isn't morbid, it's clarifying. It forces you to ask what really matters and to let go of what doesn't. Psychologist Dr. Lars Tornstam calls this process gerotranscendence, a developmental stage in later life characterized by a shift from a materialistic, role-oriented view of the world to a more cosmic and transcendent one. His research shows that as people move through their 70s and beyond, many experience a decreased interest in superficial social interaction, material possessions, and self-centered concerns. Simultaneously, they often report increased feelings of affinity with past and future generations, less fear of death, and greater need for solitary contemplation. William's 5-year journey since his heart attack illustrates this transformation. The first year was about recovery and fear. The second year, I started asking bigger questions about my life. By the third year, I began making changes, stepping back from social commitments that didn't feed my soul, spending more time in nature, having deeper conversations with fewer people. Now, I feel more alive than ever, precisely because I don't take time for granted. This heightened awareness of mortality leads many older adults to be increasingly selective about how they spend their social energy. Activities once undertaken out of obligation or habit are reevaluated through the lens of finite time. Social events that feel empty or draining are more likely to be declined in favor of experiences that offer meaning, joy, or genuine connection. A common misunderstanding is that this selectivity represents a withdrawal from life. In reality, it often reflects a deeper engagement with what truly matters. As William puts it, I'm not retreating from life. I'm being more intentional about it. Every no to something superficial is a yes to something meaningful. For family members, this shift can sometimes feel like rejection. Adult children may interpret a parent's declining of holiday gatherings or family reunions as disinterest or disapproval. Understanding that this selectivity comes from a place of wisdom rather than withdrawal can help prevent misunderstandings and hurt feelings. The fourth profound truth about social withdrawal after 70 involves the cumulative weight of loss. By this age, most people have experienced significant losses: spouses, siblings, friends, colleagues, and sometimes children. Each loss leaves not just an absence, but also alters your sense of self and belonging in the world. Jane, a 79-year-old widow, describes this experience. When my husband died 7 years ago, I didn't just lose him. I lost the person I was with him. The inside jokes, the shared references, the way we complimented each other. Then my best friend passed 3 years later. With each loss, another part of me disappeared too. The people who knew me longest, who held my history, were gone. This accumulation of loss affects social interaction in profound ways. Social gatherings can become minefields of grief triggers, empty chairs where loved ones once sat, conversations that highlight their absence, celebrations that emphasize what's been lost rather than what remains. Jane continues. At my grandson's wedding, everyone kept saying how much my husband would have loved to see it. They meant well, but each comment was like a knife. By the end of the night, I was emotionally exhausted from managing my grief while trying to appear happy for the occasion. Jane found her own way through this landscape of loss. I stopped attending large family gatherings for about 2 years. Instead, I invited my children and grandchildren to visit in smaller groups where I could manage my emotions better. Over time, I've been able to rejoin some larger events, but I'm still selective. I know my limits now. Social withdrawal after multiple losses isn't necessarily a sign of complicated grief or depression, though these conditions should be ruled out. Often, it's a natural response to a changed internal landscape. The social self is partly constructed through relationships. When significant relationships end, a reconstruction of identity becomes necessary. This process requires energy, time, and often solitude. For those supporting older adults through loss, patience and understanding are essential, rather than pushing for continued social engagement. Acknowledge the need for a period of withdrawal and reconstruction. Offer support without expectation, and when they're ready, welcome them back to social life on their terms, not yours. Remember that the social withdrawal following loss is rarely permanent. Most people eventually find ways to re-engage, though often with a changed perspective and different priorities. The challenge of loved ones is to respect this process rather than rushing it, to offer connection without demanding it, and to understand that what looks like withdrawal may actually be important inner work. The need for solitude and the art of letting go. As you age, solitude often becomes not just a preference, but a necessity for psychological well-being. This isn't about loneliness, a painful state of unwanted isolation, but about chosen solitude, a restorative state of being comfortably alone with oneself. After decades of external focus, raising children, building careers, caring for others, many people over 70 experience a natural turning inward. This inward focus isn't selfish or escapist. It's developmentally appropriate. It provides a quiet necessary for life review, integration of experience, and preparation for life's final chapters. Eleanor, a 76-year-old retired librarian, describes her daily routine. I've structured my life to include at least 3 hours of solitude every day. In the morning, I sit with my coffee and journal, reflecting on my dreams and setting intentions for the day. In the afternoon, I read or work in my garden. In the evening, I meditate. These quiet hours aren't empty. They're rich with thought, feeling, and insight. Psychologist Carl Jung believed that the second half of life naturally involves a shift from external achievement to internal understanding, what he called individuation. This process requires quiet contemplation, a stepping back from social demands to hear one's own inner voice more clearly. For Eleanor, this practice of solitude has transformed her later years. When I was younger, I filled every moment with activity and people. I was afraid to be alone with my thoughts. Now solitude is where I find my greatest joy. It's where I make sense of my life, where I feel most connected to something larger than myself. Unfortunately, Western culture often pathologizes solitude, particularly in older adults. Family members worry when an aging parent declines social invitations or spends more time alone. This concern, while well-intentioned, can interfere with an important developmental process. Eleanor encountered this misunderstanding. My daughter was convinced I was depressed because I stopped attending her weekly family dinners. She even scheduled a doctor's appointment for me without asking. What she couldn't understand was that I needed that quiet evening time for my meditation practice, which brings me more peace than any social gathering. A common mistake is confusing the need for solitude with depression or withdrawal. While clinical depression should always be ruled out, the desire for more alone time is often a sign of healthy development, not pathology. Key differences include whether the solitude brings peace or pain, whether it's chosen or imposed, and whether it enhances or diminishes overall well-being. Respecting an older adult's need for solitude means acknowledging their right to choose when and how they engage socially. It means offering connection without imposing it and understanding that a no to a social invitation isn't rejection of relationship, but an honoring of internal needs. For those over 70 who find themselves craving more solitude, communicating this need clearly can prevent misunderstandings. rather than simply declining invitations. Explaining your need for quiet contemplation can help others understand this isn't about them, but about your own developmental journey. The sixth profound truth about social withdrawal after 70 involves the liberating art of letting go of expectations, obligations, outdated roles, and the endless pursuit of approval. This isn't about giving up or surrendering, but about conscious release of what no longer serves. Richard, a 78-year-old retired executive, describes his 3-year journey of letting go. After my wife died, I realized I'd spent my entire life trying to meet others' expectations. My parents, my bosses, my children. I was the responsible one, the problem solver, the rock everyone leaned on. At 75, I decided I was done with that role. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do, even when it disappointed people. It was terrifying at first, then increasingly freeing. This process of letting go typically extends to relationships as well. Many older adults report becoming less tolerant of one-sided friendships, critical relatives, or connections that drain rather than nourish. This isn't about becoming cold or uncaring, but about recognizing the limited energy available in later life and allocating it wisely. For Richard, letting go extended beyond relationships to social obligations. I resigned from 3 community boards, stopped attending the monthly neighborhood association meetings, and declined to host the annual family reunion I'd organized for 25 years. Each no was difficult, but each created space for what mattered more to me now: my painting, my grandchildren, my spiritual practice. This process of letting go often meets resistance, both internal and external. Many older adults report feeling guilty about disappointing others or fear being judged as selfish. Family members and friends may indeed feel abandoned or confused by these changes. Clear, compassionate communication can ease these transitions. Richard found his own way to explain his choices. I tell people that at my age, I need to be careful with my energy, which means being selective about how I spend it. This isn't about caring less. It's about focusing more intentionally on what matters most to me now. The freedom that comes from letting go isn't about isolation or disengagement from life. Rather, it creates space for deeper engagement with what truly matters. By releasing obligations, outdated roles, and draining relationships, many older adults discover renewed energy for connections and activities that bring genuine joy and meaning. This process of letting go is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of aging. What looks like withdrawal often feels like liberation to the person experiencing it. Understanding this perspective shift can transform how we view the changing social patterns of older adults, not as loss or decline, but as wisdom and growth. Advice for loved ones. While the need for solitude and the wisdom of letting go are important truths about aging, equally important is the distinction between social withdrawal and isolation. The goal for most older adults isn't to eliminate social connection, but to refine it. To cultivate relationships that nourish rather than deplete, that honor authenticity rather than demanding performance. Sarah, a 75-year-old retired teacher, developed what she calls her inner circle approach. I realized I needed to be intentional about my social energy. I identified the 3 people whose company consistently brings me joy: my sister, my oldest friend, and my granddaughter. These are relationships where I can be fully myself, where there's mutual support and understanding. I prioritize these connections above all others. This selective approach to social engagement reflects what researchers call convoy theory, the idea that throughout life, we travel a convoy of social connections that changes in size and composition over time. After 70, this convoy often becomes smaller, but more emotionally significant. Quality replaces quantity as the primary measure of social well-being. While social networks naturally shrink with age, the complete absence of meaningful connection is neither normal nor healthy. Studies consistently show that extreme isolation increases risk for depression, cognitive decline, and even premature death. The goal is balance, sufficient solitude for reflection and renewal, coupled with meaningful connection that respects changing needs and energy levels. For older adults, intergenerational connections often provide unique satisfaction. These relationships offer opportunities to share wisdom, witness the future unfolding, and leave a legacy beyond material possessions. James, an 80-year-old retired physics professor, found unexpected joy in his relationship with his teenage grandchildren. At my age, conversations with peers often revolve around health problems or losses. With my grandchildren, we talk about ideas, possibilities, the future. They ask questions about my life experiences, and I get glimpses of a world I won't see. These conversations energize rather than deplete me. Technology can be either barrier or bridge to social connection in later life. Many older adults find platforms like video calling invaluable for maintaining relationships, particularly with geographically distant family. Others find technology itself exhausting, creating another layer of performance pressure in social interaction. James transitioned from technology skeptic to enthusiastic user over time. I resisted for years. My son kept trying to get me to use video calls, but I found the whole process frustrating and draining. Then during lockdown, it was the only way to see my grandchildren. My grandson spent an hour teaching me how to use it properly. Now we have weekly video chats where he updates me on his science projects, and I provide guidance. It's become a meaningful connection that wouldn't be possible otherwise. For those supporting older adults through these social transitions, understanding without judgment is essential. Well-meaning attempts to fix perceived social withdrawal often backfire, creating resistance rather than connection. What's most helpful is respecting the older adults' changing preferences while maintaining open invitations to connect on their terms. This might mean shorter visits, quieter gatherings, or different forms of interaction that accommodate changing energy levels and sensitivities. For older adults themselves, clear communication about changing needs can prevent misunderstandings and hurt feelings. Rather than simply declining invitations without explanation, which can seem like rejection, expressing both appreciation for the invitation and the reason for declining helps others understand your choices. Effective communication might sound like, "I appreciate your invitation to the holiday gathering. At this point in my life, large groups are overwhelming for me, and evening events are difficult. I'd love to see you for lunch sometime soon, when we can have a quieter conversation." This approach acknowledges the invitation's value, while clearly expressing needs and offering an alternative. As we enter the final decades of life, the opportunity to live with greater authenticity and intention becomes one of aging's unexpected gifts. The social withdrawal often observed in people over 70 isn't typically about disengagement from life, but about more selective, meaningful engagement, a refinement rather than a retreat. The wisdom that comes with age isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's about recognizing what deserves your limited time and energy and what doesn't. It's about the freedom that comes from no longer needing to prove yourself, please others, or perform roles that never quite fit. It's about the clarity that emerges when the noise of obligation and expectation finally quiets. If you're over 70 and experiencing this shift toward greater selectivity and solitude, trust that this may be exactly what your spirit needs at this stage of life. If you're supporting someone in this age group, approach their changing patterns with curiosity rather than concern, respect rather than resistance. The social withdrawal often observed in people over 70 isn't a problem to be solved, but a development to be understood. It represents not a retreat from life, but a refining of it, a distillation of connection, purpose, and meaning that reflects the wisdom earned through 7 decades or more of living. In honoring this natural evolution, we acknowledge that each stage of life has its own tasks and gifts. The task of later life isn't to maintain the patterns of middle age, but to discover a new way of being that honors accumulated wisdom, changing energy, and the precious finite nature of time. As we conclude, remember that age brings not just challenges but profound opportunities. The chance to live more authentically, to focus on what truly matters, and to find freedom in letting go of what doesn't. Thank you for joining me in exploring these profound truths about aging. If you found value in these insights, please like and subscribe for more content that honors the wisdom of later life. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. How have your social needs and preferences changed as you've grown older? What wisdom have you found in these changes? Remember that aging isn't just about time passing. It's about wisdom gathering. And sometimes, the quietest voices carry the most profound truths.